Ranam Maskricham Naram Chaivam Narotram Devim Saraswatim Yasam Tadojayam Udiyat Nastapareshu Abhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Udamashloke Bhakti Bhavati Naistiki. These verses that I just recited are usually recited, at least by me, before reading the Bhagavatam, because Prabhupada said the Bhagavatam should be recited every day in every temple, verse by verse. So the meaning of these verses is that the Bhagavatam is an eternal book. It's not just an ordinary book. It bears repeated study and repeated repetition before reciting the verses of the Bhagavatam. Also, I'd like to mention that it's a common thing. It's become a common thing that gurus in ISKCON are worshipped as gurupis, but that the ultimate spiritual master, of course, is Prabhupada. And there's a fine line between deviant groups who worship only Prabhupada and not his disciples. But I just want to mention that his disciples are kind of like, you might characterize them as assistant teachers or teachers' assistants, not the genuine article of Prabhupada himself. Of course, we're reading his books, and everything that happens in ISKCON, the temples, the deities, the Vaishnavas, the Harinam parties, they're all the result of Prabhupada setting these practices in motion, installing deities, encouraging devotees to open temples and Sankirtan and chanting the holy name. Even asked devotees to vow before the deities and himself and the Vaishnavas and the fire to chant 16 rounds daily and follow all the regulated principles, which of course everyone else does too, all the other gurus. But Prabhupada set this in motion. And he was, someone read to him about this slogan that says, purity is the force, preaching is the essence, utility is the principle, and so on. Unknown to a lot of people, Prabhupada didn't actually initiate this slogan himself. He liked it, but it was written by someone else. And it appeared, I think, in the Sankirtan newsletter every week or every month, and Prabhupada obviously approved of it. But one of the things that he liked about it, I don't know if it was one of the things, but one of the things he stressed was that purity is a force. And he said that everyone had to become pure. And it's like the shloka we recite every morning, that the Sankirtan movement is purifying the mind, and it's giving us the nectar. And at one point, Prabhupada was teaching devotees that the Krishna consciousness is just a system of enjoyment. Very simple. We can enjoy the vibes, we can enjoy the food, we can enjoy the company, we can enjoy the singing and dancing. And it's a process of recreation. That was the word he used, recreation. But as time goes on, many people find that there are certain difficulties and obstacles on the path of Krishna consciousness. One of the devotees actually wrote a book called Obstacles on the Path of Devotional Service. And these are sometimes difficult, but they have to be overcome. In a sense, all of us are kind of like soldiers fighting against Maya, which is our very powerful and ever-present enemy. In some religious traditions, people say that, well, the devil made me do it, or the personified evil made me do it. It wasn't my fault, sort of thing. But the Krishna conscious philosophy is that the devil, or the pull to enjoy sense gratification, is everywhere. It's within us, it's within the world, it's within people, it's everywhere. So we can't easily get off by saying that I was forced to do it by someone else. That force is always there, and that's the very force that we have to overcome, the strength of the force of the material energy, always pulling us away from Krishna. No matter how dedicated and surrendered we seem to be, there's always going to be an enemy. Even great souls like Prabhupada had enemies. People shot at him. There was even a plot to murder Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, which was fortunately uncovered, and the culprits were arrested before they could act. But there's always inimical forces. One of the things that was lectured on by Prabhupada in the first chapter of Bhagavad Gita, it just, in a sense, is a very difficult chapter to understand because it's just, in a sense, just a list of various warriors with a lot of hard to pronounce Sanskrit names. One time he was lecturing on this particular chapter. It was at Bhaktivedanta Manor in about 1969 or 1970, 1973 it was, 1973. And the ambassador from India to England, I don't think they call them ambassadors in England. There's another word, chief minister or something like that. Anyway, he was in the audience, and Prabhupada gave a very interesting lecture. He was saying that the Kaurava army was assessing the strength of the Pandava army, which was joined by a lot of armies from all over the world. And he went on to say that it is our intelligence to understand the strength of our enemies. And he cited the example of many examples. He said it's especially in warfare. You have to know to be a good strategist, to be effective in warfare, you have to know the strength of your enemy. That exists everywhere. We have to know the strength of Maya. In business, we have to know the strength of our competitors. They have such a thing called industrial espionage, where people actually send spies in to see what their competitors are strategizing. That happens. So he made a very strong kind of academic, you might say, point of a chapter that's very difficult to get any philosophy out of, because it's just talking about the different armies and the different leaders and the different chieftains and possible enemies of the Kauravas. But that's what was actually happening, and Prabhupada made us think about how important it is to assess the power of our enemy. So we should never underestimate the strength of Maya to pull us away from Krishna consciousness. It's always existing. And the Bhagavatam uses a very interesting example here, that Narada Muni is compared to the captain of a ship in a great ocean. It's an interesting kind of metaphor, because in a ship situation on the ocean, you have corporal punishment. I mean, I don't know if they still do it, but at least in days gone by, they used to whip people who were found guilty of wrongdoings. They had no choice, but they had to obey the captain. Whatever the captain said, that was it. That was the word. That was the truth. Had to be followed under all circumstances. So the captain of a ship is likened to a devotee, like a pure devotee, a perfect devotee, like a chief devotee, like Narada Muni, because what he says is true. It should be followed. And there's a verse that was often quoted in the Mahabharata, Mahajena Yatasapanta. I'll read the actual translation. The translation of it doesn't appear in most places, but it's actually a verse in the Chaitanya Chaitamrita. That what the Mahajans say. And who are the Mahajans? Prahlada was a Mahajan, Janaka was a Mahajan, Rama was a Mahajan. There are 12 main Mahajans, who I'll talk about later. And they speak the truth. And we have learned that truth is within the hearts of these great Mahajans. It's also in the Shastras. Shastras were very often cited by all people who speak about Krishna consciousness, but especially about Prabhupada in his books. He cited references. Not only did he say it was in the Chaitanya Chaitamrita or the Srimad Bhagavatam or the Bhagavad Gita, but he gave the exact page or the number of the verse and all these things. So it would be exacting. In this country and in a lot of Western countries, there's a phenomenon known as plagiarism, which comes from the Latin word meaning to steal. And really what it means is that if you say something, you should really give a reference. Not only a reference, but a specific reference, a page number, if there's a verse or a scene or an act, it has to be quoted. And Prabhupada was very careful to do this in all of his books. It's very commonplace in other countries, especially we've noticed in India, that the process goes on without giving credit to the origin. I was in one of the temples in Puri on one of the Parikram paths, and in the temple there's a calendar hanging on the wall. And one of the illustrations on the calendar is a famous picture that was in one of Prabhupada's books of Yashoda holding baby Krishna. And this was, in effect, it was just stolen right from the BBT or from one of Prabhupada's books without any credit. And it brought a little chuckle to our faces. I was with another American devotee. Because it was just outright, there was not even a glimmer of a credit to anyone else. It was just like, this is our calendar, it's our temple, so we do whatever we want. And if we like the picture, we just put it up there. It doesn't matter who painted it, the painter didn't get the credit. I think it was painted by Murli, by that particular painting. But it was just, it goes on. So it's of course, the Western countries have taken it to an extreme. They have even threatened to remove people's degrees. Some of the universities have threatened to remove people's master's degrees, especially in science, if they found that some of the knowledge contained in their dissertations or their final papers were actually word for word taken from another scientist who studied this particular phenomenon. So it does get to the point of an extreme, and sometimes, and it goes on very commonly. I know in media and in music, it may be subconscious, it may be conscious, but it goes on all the time. And in Krishna consciousness, it's kind of like normal. It's not a bad thing to stand on the shoulders of the great men who have gone before and repeat what they have said. Like the whole Bhagavatam is a repetition of what was said by the sages in Naimisharanya. Prabhupada has told us that we have to check everything with checks and balances, Guru, Shastra, and Sadhu. But the interesting thing is that even the Shastras, they're spoken, most of them are spoken or written by by a person who is either a Mahajan or an Acharya whose teachings we rely upon. Some people in some traditions think that that our guru can be someone who is not living, which in a sense goes against the procedure of Krishna consciousness. But in the procedure of Krishna consciousness, we take knowledge from living persons who are gurus, who are acharyas, or we are pure people, we think they are pure. And there's an immediacy that occurs there. Whenever someone is, to quote a phrase, in our face, we tend to react more than if it's just a book or a film or a written document. If that person is in our... So is a kind of an argument for the importance of having a living guru. Some people say my guru is Prabhupada, some people say my guru is Jesus and this and that. But they're not people that we can consult with because they're not around. Even though their teachings are eternal, they're not physically here in our face. So we tend to get away with just about anything. And the whole Bhagavatam has been written because Sukadeva Goswami and Sanatana Goswami didn't believe in the process of what's the word? Atonement. Yeah. And one of the things that was said in a lecture is that's kind of shows that there's something wrong with this process, is that there's a system known as confession, where people say, oh, I did this, I did that, and I was wrong, and I shouldn't have done it, and they confess to a person who's in the upper ranks of their religion. And but then they commit the same thing again. So the idea is that unless you engage in pure devotional service, where the urge to commit a sinful activity is removed because there's something greater or more enjoyable, which is devotional service, then it happens that desire is there, and therefore, even though there's confession and atonement and various other things, there's an incident that was recounted by someone, I can't remember exactly who it was, but this is a true incident. There was a fairly wealthy landholder somewhere in India who had performed some sinful activity. I don't recall what it was. So he went to these professional Prayaschita people. They called them Bhataharis. They do a lot of nonsense in the world. But they said, well, you can atone for this you can eradicate the simple reaction if you drink 1 liter of hot lead. And he said, well, I can't do that. He said, it's going to kill me. So the compromise was that, okay, well then you can drink 1 liter of molten lead. Instead of molten lead, you can drink 1 liter of boiling hot ghee. And he said, well, I can't do that because that'll kill me. So the point is, and then this, according to the story, this same person went to Lord Chaitanya and asked him, what can I do? I've been to the Badaharis. I'm willing to undergo any kind of atonement to eradicate the reactions I'm going to get from this horrible sin that I committed. What can I do? And the instruction came down that if you engage in devotional service, you will not only not commit the sin again, but you will not have the desire to commit the sin again. And it so happened once that when I was living in Los Angeles, that a group of devotees went to a Catholic school. It was called Mother Mary of the Sea. And a lot of people came to our class. They were interested to see what we had to say. These weirdos, these people that dance on street corners in pink sheets, they wanted to see what we had to say. So one of the things we said was, when we talked about this idea of, a little bit, we touched on it, of atonement, of prayaschitta. And then one of the priests, there were about 3 or 4 priests and 4 or 5 nuns that attended the class. They weren't particularly invited. They just came because they were curious to see what we had to say. But they were very interested. Anyway, this youngish looking, probably about 30-year-old priest said, I want to have a talk with you before you go in my chambers. So he was telling us how upset he was by the fact that some people came and confessed to him on the weekends about they did this, that, and that, and I want to be forgiven, I did this and that and wrong. And the priest would just ordinarily say, well, just touch the holy water and Christ will forgive you, or something like that. But what he said was that even after they confessed, he said the same people would come to confess in my chambers, in the same confession box, about the same sins they committed, sometimes with the same people. And this bothers me. Why does this happen? So we tried to explain to him that you not only have to say that you did wrong, but you have to eradicate the desire to do wrong. And we try to explain this from a Krishna conscious philosophical point of view. And I think that this priest, I'm not begging, I don't mean to beg the Christian philosophy. This is just one individual's experience. Anyway, he kind of understood it. He gave us an envelope before we left, which was sealed, and we didn't look at it because it would have been impolite to do it in your presence. But on the way back, we were driving. It's about 45 minutes from Los Angeles, south of Los Angeles. We were driving back to Los Angeles, and we said, well, I wonder what's in that envelope. And we opened it up, and there was money in it. It was either $20 or $50 or something like that. He gave it out of his own pocket, so to speak, because he really thought that we had something to say, something important that he could learn from, even though he was of a different faith, and all that sort of seemed to happen. So one of the things that Prabhupada talks about here is that we have to obey the pure devotees, and he says that unless one has become sufficiently learned philosopher by hearing the Vedanta philosophy from a bona fide spiritual master, one cannot be a learned philosopher devotee. So this indirectly, it's like saying, if you just study books, you can't learn the whole process. And I think the example was given that if you want to become like a medical person, and get a job as a general practitioner, or in a hospital as a bona fide surgeon or whatever, you have to go to an accredited medical school, and you have to get an accredited diploma or certificate. And if you just study the medical books at home and put up a shingle outside your door, or you claim that you're a doctor of this or a doctor of that, or a general practitioner or a surgeon, you're a charlatan, because you really have to get a diploma, and you have to consult with other people who have diplomas, who know it. And someone told me that what they customarily do is they put the newcomer novice people who are in medical school together with with elders, with people that are 60 or 70 that are still practicing, and they learn from them. So the idea is that personal experience is always important, whether it's in the medical field or in the scientific field or any field, or in piloting an aircraft. One learns directly from a person, not just from documents and books. It's a whole different thing. So in the Krishna consciousness philosophy, we have the Mahajans, and I'm going to read this. The one place I know that this translation appears, it's somewhere in the Chaitanya Charitamrita as a verse, and the translation reads that Lord Chaitanya was saying these dry arguments are inconclusive. A great personality whose opinion does not differ from others is not considered a great sage. Simply by studying the Vedas, which are variegated, one cannot come to the right path by which religious principles are understood. The solid truth of religious principles is hidden in the heart of an unadulterated, self-realized person. Consequently, as the Shastras confirm, one should accept whatever progressive path the Mahajans advocate. This is from the Vajalila, 17th chapter, 186th verse, if anyone wants to know. It's actually important to know because it's a very often quoted verse. I'm trying to find the place where we're at. Oh, here we are. Maj Euster said, "Oh, godly personality, I do not know where my two uncles have gone." Oh, that's the verse before. "You are like a captain of a ship in a great ocean, and you can direct us to our destination." Thus addressed the godly personality Devarshi Narada, the greatest of the philosopher devotees, began to speak. And it says at the end of the purport, Devarshi Narada used to visit the palace of Maharaj Yudhisthira because the Pandavas were all pure devotees of the Lord, and the Devarshi was always ready to give them good counsel whenever needed. So it's understood that a kind of symbiotic relationship exists between pure devotees. They weren't just listening to him and doing what he said because he was an elevated sage, but because they themselves had purity within their hearts. So this is the list of the Mahajans. Swayambhur Narada Shambhu. Swayambhur is also Brahma, Lord Brahma. Narada is Narada Muni. Shambhu is Lord Shiva. Kumaro, Kapilo, Manu, the Kumaras, and Lord Kapila Dev, and Swayambhu Manu. Palado Janako Bhishmo, and that's Prahlad Maharaj, Janaka Maharaj, Bhishma Dev, and Bali Vyasaki Vayam. Bali is Maharaj Bali, Vyasaki is another name for Shukadeva Goswami, and Vayam it refers to Yamaraj. It was Yamaraj who spoke this. It's in the 6th canto of the 3rd chapter, 20th verse, where the Vishnu Dutas are trying to, they were successful in saving Ajamila from the Yamadutas, and this verse was spoken to assert that if one chants the holy name of Krishna, the Yamadutas have no place, and you have to follow the directions of these great Mahajans, who include Yamaraj, who spoke this verse. So, if there are any other comments or any questions, now's the time. Yes.
Amen. Hold on. Sorry.
In the beginning of the class, thank you for your class. In the beginning you mentioned gurupis, but you didn't elaborate gurus and gurupis. Would you mind to just explain what you meant?
Yeah, what happens, unfortunately, sometimes is that people think their guru is the be-all and end-all, and always right about all things at all times, whatever he says. So I was just trying to highlight the difference between the guru disciples of Prabhupada and Prabhupada himself. That their power, if you want to call it that their spiritual development is dependent upon Prabhupada's philosophy and the books that they have read of Prabhupada and what Prabhupada said in his letters and his walks and his room conversations. It's all based upon that. It's not that they themselves have acquired some spiritual knowledge. Or I think there was one devotee who said that he was honored because not in the West, but I think it was somewhere in India, because he was a disciple of Prabhupada, and so he got his strength from being a disciple of Prabhupada. He got his reputation from being a disciple of Prabhupada. That put him on the spiritual platform. So what I'm saying is, contrary to modern thought, that you have to come up with something original yourself, otherwise it's considered plagiarism. But we rely on what Prabhupada taught, on his philosophy and his books and what he said in his letters and his conversations. Therefore, there's a distinction. I mean, whatever power we have, it comes from Prabhupada. It's at the same time, it's a duty of every disciple to read Prabhupada's books and to learn through their gurus what Prabhupada did say. So there's always a need for a personal interaction, whether it's through Prabhupada himself or one of his disciples. I mean, it's through his disciples that we can have a relationship with Prabhupada, or we can have empowerment. That's a corporate term, empowerment, but that's actually what's happening. One can speak or become a guru because one is empowered by his guru. In this case, I'm speaking of Prabhupada. Anyway, it's a long topic, but that's a bantam answer. Any other comments or questions? Okay, you can give the microphone back. One of the things that we learned from Prabhupada is that the most confidential and intimate pastimes between Radha and the gopis and Krishna was never publicly spoken. It was privately mentioned in conversations and walks, but in his books and in public lectures, the more intimate things, the most intimate things are never revealed. So because these classes are now being recorded and can end up in any part of the world, one has to be very careful about what one says, because that's unfortunately what's happening. I'm not in a room with it's not just limited to this room and the people in this room, unfortunately. So you should know that if you want to say anything, it could go anywhere. You could end up in Tokyo or Moscow or Buenos Aires. Hare Krishna, thank you very much.